Hello, and welcome back to another amazing episode of Dénht'ā. Hi, how are you? It's a lovely weekly podcast where I get to talk to amazing Indigenous people about our lived experiences and what we go through in our fantastic lives. And today I have an amazing, beautiful person, Miss Jewell.
Yes.
I apologize for that.
All good. All good. I love it.
Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself before I get started?
I would. Thank you. I'm Jewell Gillies. Musgamagw Dzawada'enuxw. So hello to all of you, my relatives. My name is Jewell Gillies. I use they, them, and their pronouns. And I am a very proud Two-Spirit member of the Musgamagw Dzawada'enuxw of the Kwikwasut'inuxw Nation, which is the kind of brown archipelago part of the BC coast. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that. I also love that you started with speaking your language. When did you decide that you're like, I'm going to learn?
I don't think it was a conscious decision that I made. I always had it in my life. Mm-hmm. And it was my dad who created that for me. Yeah. My dad's not Indigenous. My mom is First Nations, and she passed away when I was very young. And he had spent many, many years in my community up until then and had gone fishing and learned how to do carvings and make bintwood boxes. And so his promise to her legacy was that he was going to infuse all of his experience into us.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, they brought that in there. Because I also had language growing up my entire life as well, and I used to be able to understand it quite well. Mm-hmm. And now that I live so far away from home, because I'm from the Yukon, I don't hear it enough. Yeah. But I can pick up words still sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then I took a language class last year, which, by the way, it was probably too much for me to do because it was like 4 classes, 3-4 times a week. Like it was a lot on top of what I was doing. Yeah. So it kind of fell to the wayside. But there's something about hearing your native language. It just sounds so beautiful in your ear because you don't hear it often. Yeah.
It pulls at you like every time. So I'll see my family do a potlatch back home, and they'll be Facebooking live for some of the dances. And as soon as I hear that West Coast baritone voice of our men, and it's like, I could just start crying, right? And it's like, that's such a visceral experience, but that's like your authentic like spirit resonating with that space in that like place, right?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. It pulls at you, like you said. It's kind of like when you hear the drums, right? It just pulls at you. It's like the beating of the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It resonates totally. Yeah.
Nice. So you mentioned earlier that you're from I never heard it called the Brown Archipelago.
The Broughton Archipelago. The Broughton Archipelago, yes. So northern half of Vancouver Island and like a variety of islands and inlets that are kind of north and west of there. My family's 2 main reserves are Alert Bay and Kinkum Inlet. So both of them are, you have to access by water, by float plane or by ferry. And Kinkum Inlet doesn't have any economy other than the reserves band office and health office and stuff. There's the post offices and the band office. Groceries get delivered to the community hall. There is not a gas station because there's no roads. There's 40 houses.
Right?
Yeah, it's just dirt roads. And a number of years ago, the province they ended up having to come in and support us putting our houses on stilts because every year the inlet would flood and our homes would get devastated. So now we have this it's a really remote space, but the beauty of the land that we exist in. I would take that over a skyrise downtown anyways.
It's insanely stunning in the northern part of just like the coast in general. But when you go to the northern part of the island, I haven't went to the very northern part. I've only went to the middle, like Campbell River. But still, those islands around there, when you get to go visit them, stunning.
Yeah.
I'm also obsessed with starfish.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, I love starfish. Octopus too. I don't know why, but those are
everywhere.
They're a big thing. Yeah, they're rad. The richness of the coast's like whole ecosystem is really it's visceral. You can't not experience it. You can't not inhale it and have that tangibly impact your wellness, right? It's such a different space. It's very powerful. Yeah.
And that since your reservation is cut off from society, essentially, not cut off from society, it's just you have to get there by boat.
Yeah.
Do you get to go home often?
No, I've been home less than a handful of times in the last 10 years. Yeah. And the effort it takes to get there is a lot. Cost is a lot.
Yeah, because you have to get to the island, then go up the island, and then go back across in.
Yeah, so you go over Horseshoe Bay to Nanaimo, all the way to the northern end where Port McNeill is, and then you have to take a boat or a float plane or helicopter from there over to Alert Bay or out into the inlet. Yeah.
And the people that don't know, that always think Vancouver Island's a small island.
No, Vancouver Island is like a full day's journey.
Yeah, literally.
And the highway is not safe.
Because the freeway ends at Campbell River, right?
Yeah.
And then it's that old windy highway.
Yeah, not good. I have driven that in the wintertime. It is not joyful. I had to sit there and say, like, I love my family. Like, I love my family. I love my family. Why am I doing this? I love my family. You know?
As both hands are on the steering
exactly.
wheel. Right?
And like I'm sweating bullets as my car is like just struggling to keep on the road. But at the same time, you think about how that kind of that separation from society has so beautifully allowed my community to hold so strongly to what our identity is, what our culture is, and what those values are for us, not trying to assimilate or not trying to fit into the colonial box or not trying to, be a wallflower so that people don't find you intrusive. We are fortunate in a lot of ways with that.
Probably because since you are so isolated, they had to stick to cultures such as hunting and fishing to survive, because you said there's no economy there. Yeah. So it's all reliant on taking care of each other.
Totally.
They probably live by those Indigenous traditions of, you have the hunters and the gatherers, and then they take care of the elders. Yeah, absolutely. They always get more to take care of the community.
Yeah, we still have food fishing that happens. So every season, of course, our fishermen who have licenses go and do their fishing, and families do their own fishing, of course. But at some point in the season, they do food fishing, where all of the families that have boats, or all of the men who are fishers, they will go out and spend days, and they'll fish and harvest, and then they'll bring it all back to shore, and then the community will get together and they'll jar it, they'll freeze dry, they'll do smoking, and they'll prep everything, and then they distribute it. Yeah. And then they have drivers who will take it to the off-reserve elders who need to fill their cupboards for the winter. Single parents with little ones will always get that.
It's a beautiful sense of community, because I'm from the Yukon, and we kind of had something similar. We weren't as isolated as where you were, but we had fish camps every year, and my parents spearheaded it. So we would always go out, set our nets, bring the fish in, and then it was like a community effort where we'd all get together. Certain people would be gutting, then it'd move over to another person that's filleting, and then it'd move over to another person that was deboning, and then it'd go to another person that's cutting it slowly to hang it on the dry racks or cut it, put in or canners. Yep. It was just a whole community thing, and then it would just get divvied up to the families that needed it. Yeah.
And you think about our social system right now in Canada is, yes, we're looking at social services and how do we care for the community, and we should all care about each other, but our social circumstance really embeds this idea of what's mine is mine, and why should I have to share some of mine with you? Why are I don't think you're actually that hurting. You don't need you don't know how hard my circumstance is. Why should I put effort into you? Right? Yeah. And it's because they don't exist in that community space. Because when the social service system exists, they are not witnessing each other's journey of their own struggles. Yeah. Our lives are about wanting to just be witnessed and seen in our own journeys, not challenged, not applied to with characterization or opinions, but just we want to be able to witness that I'm here and I'm real. I'm doing this. Yeah. So in our communities, when we're saying, oh yeah, we're going to take Auntie Margaret, this extra flat of jarred fish. Nobody sits there and fights about, oh, I want more jarred fish. Why does Auntie Margaret get it? Because they all know that Auntie Margaret's watching 3 of her nieces and 1 of her grandbabies. And Auntie Margaret hasn't worked in years, but Auntie Auntie Margaret is the heart of that family. And like, so they all just know. And it's, of course, that happens, right? Yeah.
And they also know that if anyone probably went to Aunt Margaret for something, she's going to make you a meal with that salmon that you got her.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Because Auntie Margaret's going to make the next family feast when we go into the big house, right? Yeah.
Because everyone loves her salmon salad best.
Yes, or salmon sandwiches. Ooh, so good. Yeah, it's the onion and celery, something in there. Yeah. Anyways,
Love.
Right? Love. Yeah. It's what it is. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have a 10-year-old daughter. She's the love of my life. And that's the biggest thing that I embedded in her. Whenever I like was trying to encourage her to try new foods or whatever, I'd be like, how does it taste? And she'd be like, not my favorite. And I'm like, you're so sweet. I'm like, but can you taste all the love I put in there? And she's like, yeah. Yeah. Did that kind of passively coerce her into enjoying broccoli as a 6-year-old? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Am I okay with that? Absolutely.
As long as they're getting their broccoli, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The greater good.
I've talked about this before on this podcast, but you mentioned this, like we talked about putting love into stuff.
Yeah.
And it's such an Indigenous thing that if you're doing any activity to put like a good mindset before you do it.
Yeah. Everything is ceremony.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting with that concept when I was really young. And it's how much you apply care for yourself in whatever you have to do, right? Like, I have to go to the store, I have to get groceries, I have to go pick up the stuff from the laundromat. Yeah. I'm caring for myself and my family. I'm meeting my expectations and my responsibilities. And that's sacred. That's ceremony. That's when we come into potlatch and our chiefs and our matriarchs come onto the floor. We're not just saying things for the sake of speaking.
To fill space.
Speaking for nonsense. That's us honoring the existence of our lives, right? Because we're meant to exist in it, not just receive from it or be a passerby of it. So when I'm cooking food for my daughter, I'm in ceremony, and I need to be mindful of what are my intentions when I'm making this, right? I've had absolutely times where I've had a hard time, or her and I have had a moment after school, and I'm like, I'm really worked up right now, and I literally have to go sit by myself and find a way to come back to my calm, because I don't want to feed that energy to her.
Yeah, literally put it into the meal that you're going to make.
Yeah, and that goes into everything we do, right? Beadwork, a huge piece.
Yeah.
I used to bead really, really regularly, and then family started passing, and I just couldn't hold on to the joy that those pieces were intending, and I had to put it away for years. Yeah. And I'm okay with that, right? Yeah.
And one day it may come back, right?
Exactly.
But also leads right into our conversation of community, right? Because everything we do is ceremony, but also not only about ourselves. It's where our place in the community is, and what we're doing within the energy we're giving out.
Yeah.
And I always had to remind myself that. I used to call it as I was choosing my attitude, but then I was realized that was a phrase a white person told me.
Yeah.
So I always tell myself, this is a ceremony. I got to put myself in this position where I'm going to imprint the good feelings I have into this task that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that whoever else is going to take it up is going to be like, this is a good day.
Yeah, right? I think that's the authenticity, right? And so I used to work at Okanagan College, and we have a traditional garden on campus there that has 50 some odd local Silk Okanagan and Indigenous plants. And we would do educational harvests and presentations in there for students and community. And we have a massive amount of sweetgrass that grows in that garden. It just loves that space.
Nice.
And I would have staff come out, and they were just I've never seen sweetgrass. I've never smelt it. I'm gonna get to harvest it. And they would just grab the shears, and they'd be so excited to go. And I'd be hold on. And I'd bring out this big thing of tobacco, and everybody what? Are we gonna smoke a peace pipe right now?
No.
And I'm like, no, this is how we remind ourselves that we are still part of this system.
Yeah.
We're not just privileging ourselves and taking from. We're going to be present. And why? Because I'm taking this thing because that thing is powerful. Yeah. Because I need that.
Yeah.
So that's humility, right? So holding a little bit of tobacco in their hands, and I was like, go stand wherever you're going to harvest, and that's your own conversation with you and whatever in the universe you speak to. But you have to be mindful that everything is impacted by the energy that you put into it and the intentions you have for it. Right?
Yeah. And you don't want to kill the plant. You got to learn how to harvest properly, right? So that it can keep growing and keep giving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that whole concept of giving thanks.
Yes.
Which a lot of people sometimes forget because we're in that mindset, or sorry, a big part of the population's in the mindset of taking mine, I've earned this, I'm going to take that.
And through sense of like their victimhood almost, right? Instead of like exalting in the like the righteous, like you have a right to that. Like, you know, I find it so interesting that we always look to what's next or what we don't have rather than seeing how full our plate is right now.
Yeah. Which is wild. I have some friends in my life that always want more. Yeah. And I was like, you just need to stop, look around. Like, it's good to want more, no problem, but you also got to realize what we have. Yeah. Like, I'm always marveling where I live. Kelowna is a beautiful place. It's fantastic. I have healthy friends. I have a healthy life. I can go out into the woods. I can go for a hike. I can take a day to myself if I need to. Yeah. So it's like, there's always need to be thankful for where we are, and then give thanks that you can do that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest cornerstones of like, how do we reclaim our power of our mental health too, right? Is the biggest piece of when you're in like a moment of like severe anxiety is like coming back to what's in the present, what's right now. So using your 5 senses or identifying 5 things in the room, or like it's actively trying to bring your brain back to the present now. Yeah. So for sure, have goals, have plans, have aspirations, and have the vision of where you want to go next. But don't do it at the deficit of not seeing the effort it took you to achieve your space right there. And sometimes that is in and of itself is the buoyancy that gives you like, oh yeah, wait, I did have to slog through the last couple of years of COVID, and man, that was hard, but I'm still doing this, and like I still have that potential, right? Like, speaking of that, because taken aback and sitting back and acknowledging what we've done, because like you said, you have a young person in your life. You're also doing your master's. You had to deal with all that, and you're almost done your master's, right? Almost done, yeah. How was navigating all that?
I don't think I did navigate it. I think it tossed me on like just this whirlwind thunderstorm, and I just kind of like rode it out in the eye of the storm. I used to work in a post-secondary institution for years, and now as a student in that same kind of space, and as an Indigenous person, as an Indigenous queer person, and as a very humbly empowered disruptor.
That's a great phrase. I love that, by the way. Humbly empowered disruptor. Yeah. So good.
Thank you. I knew going into it that I was going to be the challenge that they had. I sat with business profs from Okanagan College who were friends of mine, and I was like, so, like, we both know this is going to be the issue. And they're like, yeah. I had to constantly remind myself in that space. It's the most oppressed experience that I've had, to be honest with you, because they kept flouting this aspiration of you are an empowered Indigenous leader, but yet still existing in such a colonial structured space. And I need to be really clear in when I say colonial structure means that it privileges the non-Indigenous white voice and disadvantages ours.
Even though they're claiming that it's going to help you or better you, but it's not.
No, and it's the shell game, right? It's government and ministries trying to act and be perceived as actioning TRC and Dénht'ā. But when you look at how our education system, we were talking about it earlier, you're wanting to teach them to be autonomous soldiers, right? They want you to like memorize by rote and apply their logic and support systems that they have established at every moment.
Because it works for them.
Yes, it keeps them in comfort, right? And so at every moment when I try to push for a different way of assessment, if I was like, can I do a oral, like in-person presentation rather than an essay? I come from an oral tradition. My family are orators. Like this is our law as well, right? And
There'd be pushback. Be like, no. Yeah. Like, well, I can record it for you.
Yeah. And like to be sitting there and not to just say no, but to say no because they do not evaluate that in the same way that they value their own colonial assessment system. Yeah. So there's, in that whole process, there's no interest in actual reconciliation there because there's no interest in compromise. Mm-hmm. They're wanting to be performative of, we're supporting Indigenous peoples and look at us trying to, support their own Indigenous economy and, creating great business folks. But it's not real if it's not our voices stating what we need, what we want, and what we already have.
Yeah. Yeah. But once again, they don't see that way because they want to stay in their own comfort.
Exactly.
That was my biggest thing when I was in post-secondary is that I used my indigeneity to get into school. Yeah. Because they had places for us.
Yes.
I'm going to throw that in there. But once I was there, I found all their Indigenous, incentives or initiatives was all performative.
Yes.
It was just there to put their name on it and that was it.
Yeah.
And then when I tried to push for more of an Indigenous education for myself, they told me that I can create my own course plan if I had backup from the professors. Yeah. So I did that for my 4th year, did everything that I needed to. And then the university was like, no.
Yeah.
We'd prefer it if you went into, because it was social work. They're like, we prefer that he did child welfare. Is it because I'm Native and you're going to take away Native kids and you think there'd be a better liaison between me and them?
Yeah.
I hated it.
And if you look at what is the whole, what was the foundation tenet of higher education? It's meant to create discourse. Yeah. It's meant to evolve ideologies. It's meant to diversify perspective. It's meant to disperse knowledge or new theories in larger spaces in different ways. And if all we're hearing, this same we talked about earlier, our community as Indigenous peoples, we're always starting with the no, but, right? Whereas non-Indigenous folks in all these spaces, Eurocentric folks in Pacific, for post-secondary are, you can, and we will, right? Yeah. There's always a yes, and their but is and this is how we'll create the loophole for that. Yeah. Or this is how we'll say that, that's really not a bad thing.
Yeah. Things are made easier and we're given roadblocks.
Yeah. And we don't need a master's degree to be powerful in any space in our economy. Our Indigenous knowledge is so much broader than what any diploma, PhD, or certificate could provide us.
Or sorry, just to not interrupt you, but I was thinking about my one friend made an Indigenous focused resume once, which is very different from an academic resume where they wrote on there all their lived experiences, what they do, and why it's going to contribute to that. Yeah. And I remember the one person looked at it and they're like, this isn't going to get you hired anywhere. Yeah. They're but you're discrediting all the things that I've done just because it's not written behind a certain corporation or written behind an academic
because I haven't assimilated, yet I still have somehow gained that tacit knowledge despite. Yeah. That's where I really like that word of being a disruptor is I don't want my child to be, that's because this is how we've always done it, or I did that because I was told so. Because the road to hell is paved with all of those apathy to critical thinking. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Literally. Always ask why. Yeah. Even if it gets you in trouble.
Exactly.
Why are we doing this?
Yes. Yes. Never lose that. My daughter was 4. And just, why, mama? Why, mama? Yeah. Why, mama? And even now, she'll be driving with me, and she'll say, I have a question. And I'm like, let me have it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Right? And the curiosity. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. You not living, but working in school, so you have a firsthand knowledge of how it's been. You mentioned that in your current situation, you've gone through some things that weren't a big fun. Do you find that being an Indigenous person or being a disruptor, there's a lot of feedback to tell you to calm down?
Yeah. Yeah. Or that when I'm voicing that I'm perceiving this barrier to my ability to show up with my full self, I'm being told that's just your learning experience. That's what this journey is about. Yeah. And it was it was flipped back as if that's your struggle, as in I need to figure out how to still flex or change me to fit into their system.
Yeah.
And
we love everything you're doing, but we need you to change this.
Yeah, but if you could just maybe not use so much slang. This is the biggest thing for my daughter too, is I have had to sacrifice a lot of weekends, a lot of nights snuggling her to sleep in lieu of sitting on the couch and writing essays or doing research or whatever. And I've always made points of looking at her afterwards too and saying, but this is why.
Yeah.
Right? Because now I work as a contractor. I have a very flexible schedule, and I now have the ability to, if she needs a slower start to her morning because it's been a rough whatever, I'm not panicking and screaming at her to get out the door because I have to get to an office job at 8:30.
Yeah.
I have now reclaimed pieces of control in those spaces of my life that are important to me. And so I've made those points of sharing with her, as much as I know, and I'm not taking away from the fact that this has been hard on both of us, being a single mom and doing all the things. I also want you to see, again, have gratitude and take look at it from the other perspective. We now have this. Yeah. Right?
We can now do this. Yeah. I can now be home. You can now sleep in.
Yeah. Or I can now be more present in those creative spaces even, right? So I think there's so many opportunities there where that has allowed me to just reaffirm for myself.
But you're also keeping her in the loop, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people don't do that. They're do this because I say so.
Yes. Yeah. We think of our children as in this weird way of they are their own individual selves, but parents, I find, often feel as if they know what their child's knowledge is.
Yeah.
I have no idea how much knowledge my child has. And my child, I will tell her often, you were my biggest teacher.
Yeah.
And our ability to inspire them to be creative rather than to sit there and try and again say, no, that's not for you, or no, you're not there yet, or no, you don't understand this, I think is wild.
It's a good mindset too, because like you said, she's your biggest teacher and you're growing together, right?
Yeah.
Because you have experience of being a 10-year-old, but also you don't have the experiences they have.
Yeah.
They're also growing up with a modern technological world where we didn't have that when we were younger. So it's very different experiences.
Yeah. I had that old TV with the antennas, and I had to go and turn, I was the one that had to turn the channels, and we had 8, 12, and 13.
Yeah.
On, that's what I had mission in the countryside. So
I had the same experience, and then when we got a remote,
right?
Yeah, but then if they couldn't find it, they'd yell at you.
Yes, then it was the fights over who lost it and get up off the couch because they know it's under your cushion, right? And it usually was under my cushion. Let's be real,
It totally was.
Yeah. So constantly being able to not, and it's the same thing as truth and reconciliation, right? We're not just the sum of our sorrows. We're also the strength of our scars. We're not just the atrocities of MMIW in residential schools and the 60 scoop and forced sterilization in day schools. We are also matriarchs.
Yeah.
We are also Chief Antoine, who's doing amazing work in his nation. We're also still here in all of those ways, right?
That's a good point, because I have a lot of people that ask about this, is because a lot of the representation that is out there with mass media is Indigenous traumas.
Yes.
And then I was like, there's a lot of Indigenous joys too. And they're like, well, we don't see them. I'm like, that's why you're always invited to a powwow. You can always come to our little gatherings. You're not excluded from them. Come out and see the joy. The only time we get covered from media is if something bad happens. So that's why you only think that negative's happening. Come experience Native joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I work with BC Campus on a few post-secondary resources for faculty and staff on supporting Indigenous learners who are survivors of sexual violence. And the biggest part of that for me was to try and communicate that exact piece. if you can't see that we are our empowered identities who can already manifest our own joy, then how are you going to help us get back there?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Because if you're only seeing us through one lens, which is from a trauma perspective, you're not really going to help us.
Yeah,
you're going to keep us back.
Yep. Yeah, if we're never seen as being whole and fulsome of ourselves, then nobody's ever going to think that they can impact and help.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Speaking of Native joy, I'm going to pivot a little bit.
Yes.
Because you are on the planning committee for Kelowna Pride's first ever Two-Spirit powwow.
Yes. I'm excited about it, actually. So I very randomly got a message from Davina Kula, who's on the Kelowna Pride Society board, and it just asked, like, would you be interested? Would you have time? And I was like, frick yeah. Biggest thing I had noted in the last few years, just through social media, is the Native Americans in the States are so much more progressive.
They have so much going on,
right?
Like I've made a bunch of friends at a gathering of the nations. I think it was there, and then so many Native Two-Spirit Americans were there, and so I added them on Facebook.
Yeah.
They have Two-Spirit powwows and Two-Spirit gatherings everywhere.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
It's amazing that and that we're now seeing it, of course, filter up this way. And it's cool because we're manifesting this space for all of the healing that our people deserve, right? We're manifesting a space that many years ago, but not too long, we were not allowed, right?
Yeah.
And even
it was illegal, or banned or whatever.
And even now, one of the first conversations we had in our council or committee meeting was being mindful that our own community is still internally struggling with our queer identity and how that intersects with our culture and our spirituality and our history of magnificent, powerful Two-Spirit people, and how do we care for that, right? Being responsible to the space, not just creating it, right? There's some amazingly powerful Two-Spirit folks on that committee too.
There was. I gotta admit though, when I first heard that Kelowna Pride was doing it, there was a part of me being like, oh, is a white person gonna be doing this?
I know.
And then when I went into the first meeting with you all, I was like, everyone here is Indigenous.
Yes.
And Two-Spirit. I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah, I felt so seen. I felt like that was my, I'd walked into my big house, that's there's very few spaces where I exist amongst peers as Indigenous. There's almost no spaces where I exist as a peer with Indigenous queers. So that was just, I was just sitting there like a little...
Literally listen to everyone where we have not the same experiences, but similar experiences. And we're like, this is amazing. And plus, we all have different walks of life. So even though I don't contribute much in the meetings, a little bit, but I'm learning so much from everyone.
Yes. And that's the thing is, it's not about measure of contribution. It's about the value of your presence, right?
It's beautiful. We're going to create magic.
Yeah.
June 6th.
Exciting times. June 6th down at City Park. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. And you and Madeline are going to be our MCs.
Yes.
Okay.
I got to admit, though, my ego went a little bit high when they called it the voice of the powwow.
Yes.
I was like, I am.
Yes. I could see you standing on top of Knox Mountain with a very epic kind of photo being the voice. Yeah, it's rad. I love this.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm quite excited for it. I think it's going to be such an amazing event. I've already had someone message me being like, can I come? Yes. And I was like, it's open for everyone.
Oh, yes. It's everybody. Please come. Please come and ask questions.
Yeah. Be present. Enjoy it.
Yes.
We love to answer questions.
We do. We do. Especially me. I'm just a talker, so I'll talk anyways. But
if it's said in a respectful way.
Absolutely.
If you come with a little bit of negativity and intensity.
Heart-centered.
Yeah, exactly.
Heart-centered. Yeah. So that's a really big thing is what you're talking about earlier, come to our community events, come to our ceremonies. Powwow, especially Kamloops, I feel kind of felt for a number of years is that's just natives only can go. I don't know if we as white folk can go.
It was very
it's tribal feeling. Yeah. And also though, fair.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
sorry.
Have your own
Fair.
space. It's on their own traditional
Right.
lands.
Yeah. It's everybody gets like, that's your thing. Cool. But like, I want to highlight how you had mentioned it earlier is like, we've never not been welcoming with open arms.
Yeah.
We have never not wanted to collaborate. We have never not wanted to witness their, you know, our peers' respective, you know, gifts and perspectives that they bring with them, because as we do in potlatching, or as we do in like when we do the Ulakan, you know, the Grease Trail.
Yeah.
Many years ago, it was about bringing the wealth was your abundance of community that you could bring together.
Everyone gets fed.
Yeah.
No one gets left out.
Right.
And if you can't get it, someone's going to bring you a plate.
Exactly. Come back to Auntie Margaret,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, and her fish sandwiches.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely come out and experience it, because
Yes, June 6th.
this is it's always blown my mind with, like, granted, thank you for asking if you can come and stuff like that, but it always blows my mind when they instantly think that it's like a native only thing, and they respect that, but as soon as someone puts like a native only thing, they get all up to be like it's racist.
Yeah. So either we can have our own thing, or we can't.
Yeah.
But we can have it both.
Yeah.
Yes, I find it. But again, it's a conflicting, complex space to exist in, because I also recognize that on our side, there are a lot of Indigenous folks who are on different parts of their healing journey.
Yeah, literally.
And for them, that is like potentially a trigger or like a really hard spot. And all like respect to their own efforts in healing. But I would love to see just the variety of like two-spirit queer folks that are gonna come out and showcase their vibrance, their regalia, their dance styles.
And there's probably going to be people that have never thought about coming out to these events that are going to come out and see kin, and then just be like, I can be more open.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they're going to find community, even though we do have our Indigenous community. Yeah. But like you said, first time being in a space where it's Indigenous and two-spirit. Yeah. It's a different feeling, because you have a community, but then you find your community.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I remember the first few times that I kind of really came into the Kelowna Pride kind of spaces. It was very white, right? Yeah. And not that it wasn't joyful, it's still a safe, like wonderfully inviting queer space. It just was still not. It wasn't that inner sanctum of people, right? Because I can't expect somebody to have my lived perspective if they haven't had that social location. I
agree with that, because like Kelowna Pride, I've known them for a long time. Fantastic people. They're always like, they're kind-hearted. They have the best input if they can. But once again, it's a different experience when you're going into a meeting where everyone has similar experiences. Yeah. Like, you know, like of the cultural
variety. Absolutely. And being in a time where you are tangibly witnessing and experiencing all of these queer professionals being the raddest fucking accomplices to reconciliation in really cool ways. I don't know how many meetings I've gone into where the chair for KPS has opened with a territory acknowledgement, and not just done like a done by rote statement, but actually then sat there and shared how their own personal experience with building relationship to this land has been, or what they are grateful for.
That's more powerful.
Yeah.
I'm tired of people just reading by the book. It sounds performative. It's boring. I hate it. But if you have like a course of action.
Go sing O Canada, please. Right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I don't need that. I don't need it. But I do need to know that you've had an hour's lunch even sitting in a park somewhere. I do need to know that you consider, what does that forest glade over there look like 50 years from now? Yeah. I do care for you to consider, did that field of arrowleaf balsam root, was that the field that supported this nation's like health and wellness? Because those are all pieces that matter, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That matters to the local people here, the local Indigenous people. Definitely does. I was thinking about this while we were talking about it, because thinking about the meetings we went in with the two-spirit powwow that's coming up, and thinking about meetings where it's with a bunch of other white people, even though it's a welcoming space. I was thinking like there's so many situations where we've had to whiteify ourselves in some situations to be heard, you know, or we have to like act a certain way just to be listened to. And then once they have our voice, then we start bringing in like our our disruptor a little bit. Whereas like when it was just a bunch of us natives talking about the powwow, it's like there's nothing holding us back. We all say what we want. We're all bringing our personality forward, and it's a fun collaboration.
And it's like you're able to like unburden yourself, right?
Because you don't have to put up a face.
There's no mask you have to wear. There's no delicate trying to like infiltrate a space and not be perceived as being uncomfortable or not be perceived as being aggressive or and then we talk about like all of the space, the work that we do, just how we show up in our day. Is us speaking to the history and the legacy of cultural genocide of our people. We talk about genocide with soft voices every day. Right? And we have to, because that's the only way that people will ever actually listen.
And like you're talking about being a disruptor, and like I'm doing that. Are we dull ourselves down for certain situations?
Soften it.
Soften it. And it's work. Like I don't want people not to think it does. When we actively go out, when we actively go out and we actively be a disruptor, we know that there's going to be pushback. So we have to be in a mental state where we can handle that, and that's all the time. Whereas if we're just a group of kin, there is no pushback. It's just us talking. And it's so freeing.
Absolutely. I even just like you going out with beadwork on would be something, right? You would have to be prepared to respond to somebody's query on it. Whereas if you're just in your community, like when you put your beadwork on, it's like, oh my God, it's right. And then you were just able to just receive. Right. Instead of having to give something. Without actually receiving, because a lot of times when people are like, oh, that looks so beautiful, but like what, like it isn't, you're not able to receive that gift of the compliment because you're having to immediately put energy out to help them feel comfortable.
It's so true. Think about beadwork though, talk about this. Have you ever had someone with your beadwork ask you like if you got it from a native person?
I did. Okay, so I did one of the first times, and I immediately then created a process on what I was going to say in future. Whenever anybody mentioned my beadwork, I immediately, because when they asked me that, I got really insulted. I was like, what?
I did too once. It's like
no, that's me. Like I made that. And so when anybody's like, oh my gosh, like I love your earrings, I don't even let them finish that sentence before I'm like, thank you so much. I made them myself. And like, I need to claim that. Right.
Before they'd be like, oh, did you support a native artist or did you buy it online? Like, are you really asking me that?
And like, how do we apply, where is that question coming from? What's the intention of that question? And if it's about, are you existing as that honorable patron
ally
of the arts or whatever, and like sourcing Indigenous made, where do we get to give non-Indigenous folks the authority to even have a voice in that conversation other than just to listen and do better, right?
I think that's all I need to do is listen and do better.
Be a good human, right?
Be a good human, exactly.
Yes. My dad, I remember, so talking about language, like growing up with language, and my dad, we had a whiteboard on the wall by our dining table in the kitchen because my brain, that's what I did. I also read the thesaurus as like an evening pastime because I love words. That is weird. Anyways, he would sit there and he was trying to teach me what our word in our language is for like ourselves, like as Indigenous peoples, we would say Bakwam or Bakwam and Kwakwala. And he was trying to explain to me one day about like what does Bakwam mean, and he went to this very like deep philosophical place, and him and I, we have like stutters and like fluency issues when we get really excited, and he was like and he's like, hon, it's about being a good human. And like he just was like and it was just so simple, right? Like just be a good human. And so then you take two words in my language. There's Namayut, which is similar to all my relations, where it's this idea of I see all of you as part of me, but not just like the people, but I see everything in this space as having equal right to respect and care, as I do. And that I have a responsibility to contribute to that if I expect some of that respect, right? And then the other word in our language is mayahala, which is to treat everything with the utmost respect from this very deep sense of like your humble place. Because the universe is massive and it's magical, and you are magical. But there's so many other magical pieces there that you have to equally honor. And so when my dad was like, just be a good human, like, it's not that hard.
Yeah. It goes back to that sense of community, right? Like, because you're a magic person, there's other magical beings there. We all live harmoniously together. We all create magic together. We're
literally on a journey together, right? The journey of the mundane Mondays, the journey of the struggle with the air conditioning, the journey of getting our kids to school on time. But if we're not able to be present in companionship or witnessing each other's journeys, then how are we going to know when they fell off their canoe and they need help, right? Literally. So it's a cool place to be, I think, as Indigenous peoples, but it can be exhausting.
I can agree with that being exhausting for sure, because the world is getting more knowledgeable, which is fantastic. The world is becoming more conscientious of the native struggles that we have. And people are asking more questions, which is great. But if that's all you're doing is answering questions, sometimes it gets so tiring.
So this is where at some point you recognize that you are wanting to create an enablement of buffering from action. Right? So if I just sit here and say, I'm still learning, then that stops you from having to try. And it saves you from the potential of failure. I when I was working at Okanagan College, I had a number of different projects and initiatives that I was trying to get off the ground as part of our indigenization strategy. And I was getting really frustrated because everybody wanted the curriculum to just stop at them sitting there and asking us to tell them our treasure chest of traumas. And sell them my sob story of why they should give a damn. And then they, actively in those sessions, we'd sit there and say, trying to pull everybody's voice into the discussion and contribute. And so many of them were given I'm going to say it, the white fragile pass of, I'm still learning and I just am here to listen today. And I sat there and I clapped back and I was like, in 2020, there is no more room to just sit and listen, because that is apathy to the issues. And there's no place for that, right? Willful ignorance is not a value that we care for. And so there has to be like intentional curiosity applied to what is your position in that ecosystem? What aspects of this whole environment of truth and rec and being a good human do you have impact on, that do you receive benefit from, and where you have a voice of prominence in, and then apply action. And do it even if you think you're going to fuck up, or if you're scared you're going to fail, or you're worried you're going to blunder and hurt somebody's feelings. You have to do it anyways. That's the reconciliation part, right? And I feel like society is getting really stuck in that comfortable space. Right? And that's why we have land acknowledgements that are,
performative.
So
like, I just said this now to make me feel good now. Because I could say that, that Indigenous word, and I've practiced it 3 times and it rolls off my tongue, and yet I couldn't tell you about a single thing about that community or their history with colonization. Or the significance of arrow leaf in this area.
Right? I've had so many rad conversations with Indigenous leaders, Indigenous knowledge keepers, Indigenous visionaries. In my master's program, it's an Indigenous business leadership program at SFU, and it's all Indigenous cohort of students, and they all are like incredible leaders in their own worlds and in their own work and in their own families. And sitting in rooms with them and hearing that same sentiment echoed back, where they're saying in their spaces, no more talk, we now need action. has been really ratifying, and it has definitely been the thing that's bolstered me, because that emotional labor is hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It like lights a fire for your disruptor.
Yeah, right. And nobody's paycheck is gonna like compensate for that emotional labor, right?
Talking about like paychecks for this, I do a lot of talks for like Two-Spirit things around. A lot of times it's with like corporate things I want to do it, and then some of them are like, why is your fee so high for that? I was like, why do you want me to go into a space to talk about the things I've been through to make a bunch of white people better? I was like, there's going to be a dollar sign attached to that.
Absolutely. I
was like, you want me to unleash my traumas so you can do better, to have people be like, I'm just learning, I'm listening today.
So you can be perceived as being allies. You're going to pay me for that privilege.
Exactly.
You
have your corporate money, I'll take it.
Exactly. That was a big thing. So that was another big thing at the college that we started working on, because we had an elder in residence program like many institutions do, and we would often have knowledge keepers on contract and have them come in and host various like workshops and teachings. And they were always, I always was so frustrated with the way that we remunerated their knowledge. An elder could come in from Vernon, having driven 2 hours, and do an opening and welcome people to the territory for this event. And I would look at it and say, what would you pay a PhD keynote to come and do a 1 hour presentation? Oh, well, that, you know, they went to school and like they're all the things credited and like stuff. That is exactly what that elder is.
Yeah.
And the value that you're getting is so incomparable to, you could get 10 PhDs from your colonial system of knowledge, and that still will not shine a light on the fulsomeness of what that elder brought with them, because nobody else can welcome you to this territory.
Yeah.
And nobody else can ask those ancestors to care for you. Yeah. And that's what you are asking for when you're doing this process. So again, don't do it by rote. Yeah. Don't do it to check the box. Literally. Invest in the relationship. Yeah. Why are we doing that?
I remember I was doing something at, I think it was UBCO, and they're like, oh, we got to get an elder to bless the place and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, but why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And they're like, because we've always done it. Yeah. I was like, that's not a good enough answer.
Yeah, no.
Like, you need to know why you're bringing them in.
Yeah. It's the same as like an apology, right? If you just say you're sorry, but you don't know why you're sorry, that's not real.
I'm sorry my words hurt you.
Yeah, right? That's not a full apology. It's like you have to have action that changes that, right? Yeah. Invest it in your own learning, not like journey. I'm sorry, but as an adult, you certainly have done research on your car, the rental that you have, which movie in the theater that you want to see first. You cannot tell me that Google is too hard a tool to use to go and research MMIW. You cannot tell me that it's too hard to go and review the Truth and Reconciliation Commission or the MMIW report or the In Plain Sight report on the massive amount of racism in our healthcare system.
It leads down to they just don't want to.
Exactly, because it keeps
it's
them
all
comfortable.
There. It's readily available. It's easily searched. Comes up as usually the first one on the top. Yeah. It's not hidden behind like 10 pages of stuff.
Exactly. We have bumper stickers with 215 now.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody in our communities know what that reference is, right?
And some people don't.
Yeah. And that's, again, I'm not going to share it with them. They can go and research what does 215 mean. Yes,
because we all have a supercomputer in our pockets. We all have phones.
Yep. One of the biggest things that I say in a lot of my workshops is like, I recognize that us in this room, we're not social workers by trade, but we all have a social responsibility to do better moving forward. Yeah. So put effort in, right?
Hear that at home?
Yeah.
We all have a social responsibility. Do better. Put effort in.
Be good humans.
Yeah, be good humans.
Also, come dance with me. I'm going to be at the powwow. Come have some bannock.
Literally June 6th.
Yes. That's the thing though, right? Is like, as much as we talk about all these hard things and like we're using very challenging voices to like demand more or expect better, we're not without like the joy, also like the laughter, right? And like the humor and like the ability to like create relationship because of the like the depth of that difficulty. That then means that relationship's real, right?
Because you're talking about doing emotional labor. Yeah. Because we're doing that all the time coming into your spaces, which unfortunately is the whole world. All of Turtle Island has become a colonial space, so we're putting that labor out. So please come into our spaces where we have our powwow so you can actually see us relaxed, having fun.
Yeah. absolutely.
Then you'll see us without our masks.
Exactly. You will see us without the code switching, and you'll see the e's and all the different things. It's where my like real loud war cries come out, and everybody just kind of like, that small person. Please do.
Literally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jewell, this was fantastic. You are an amazing human being. I've known you for a few years now, and I don't think we've ever had like such a long, in-depth conversations. It's always been in passing. How you doing? A little hug, a little kiss, and then going our separate ways. I am so grateful to know you in my life because you are such an amazing human being.
Oh, thank you. I also have always really admired you. And I've always wanted to have like more engagement with you. So I've just loved this time, and I just mad respect.
Well, we opened the doors. Now we can hang out more.
Absolutely.
Plus, we'll be seeing you every week in the meetings until the powwow.
Facts. Yes, absolutely. I'm excited. Okay, so can I ask you one more question? Though? Have you ever emceed for a powwow before?
I have never emceed for a powwow before, but I have been to a lot of powwows, and I've talked to people that have emceed. So there was a part of me that was a little nervous at the beginning because it's a different situation. Yeah. And then there was some feedback being like, well, we know your humor, Ella.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm not going to bring that same person forward. But I have been doing research for it to make sure that I'm a good, respectful, responsible voice of the powwow.
You're also gonna we gotta have the jokes though.
I know how to make a good native joke. I have a good repertoire of native jokes.
Because we love some laughs. We love some good laughs. Yeah. I'm so happy. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, I hope you have a great rest of the day. Do you want to say goodbye to our lovely people?
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's nice to talk.
Yeah. Make sure to follow along so you can find out when Jewell. Actually, do you want to like say your social media if you want to be where you're at?
All I have that's really public is my Instagram, which is like everything really. And it's just Jewell Gillies on Instagram. Yeah.
Give them a follow.
Yes.
Because if they're ever doing something cultural around town, they'll usually post it there. So
always. Yeah. And just like the random snippets of like my Indigenous worldview. Yeah. And that's just an invitation to see the joy.
To do better.
Yes.
To be a good human being.
Yes.
Put some work in.
Yes, that's right. I love it.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a good day.